everybody, and welcome to The View from the Top. We're back, it's Wednesday, and we have got the most amazing show for you today. We've got two of the nicest global mobility professionals you could ever hope to meet. We've got Charles Ameno from Intuit and Melissa Knight from Teva Pharmaceuticals. We've got Julia Onslow-Cole with her immigration updates, and of course we've got polling research from Michelle Durkin. But we've got so much more than that. We've got an interesting fun fact we're going to share with you. Do you know why King Ramesses, Pharaoh, needed a passport? And we've got his passport. We'll talk about that. And I told you earlier today, teaser alert, we are going to share some really, really big news. There's big news coming out. What's it going to be? Well, we'll tell you later. You'll find out in the show. We're going to tell you what's coming out, and you will find out during the show. We're going to be talking about immigration, and after Julia's immigration session, we're going to be releasing this news, and I want everybody to get involved in this amazing new initiative that we're going to be launching today. It is so exciting. And I can see people are coming in. We're getting people coming in from all over the world, from London, from Houston, from Singapore, from Suffolk, from DC, from Switzerland, from Chicago, from Dallas, from France. I mean, people are coming in from all over the world. And as you come in, please just say hi, join the conversation, write in the box. The only way we know who is here is if you put something in the conversations box. You can ask us questions. You can say where you are, say what the weather's like, just say a bit about yourself. I'm seeing more people getting from people from Poland, from Chicago, from Arizona, from Minnesota, from Tampa. We're already over 100 people coming live on the screen. This is so exciting. So as I said, we've got Charles Ameno and Melissa Knight, and we're going to having a real good old chat with them in a moment. But before we do, what I do want to do is just tell you about what we've got coming up next week. I always like to trail the following week as well. And next week, we're going to do a deep dive. We're going to go into remote working from home, working from anywhere. And that is a fascinating area. I think it's one that we're all struggling with. We've got next week, not one, not two. We've got three separate experts. We've got tax covered, we've got immigration covered, and we've got labor law covered. And we're going to be going into it. We're going to be asking the questions. We're going to be doing a couple of case studies, like what happens if, all these what ifs. And more importantly, you are going to have the chance to ask any questions you want. How often do you get free professional advice from one advisor, from two advisors, from three advisors in the same time at the same place? So make sure you don't miss that next week. And that's next week on Wednesday. And then next week on Thursday, we've got another technology session, and we're going to be talking about technology to deal with Core Flex, Benevo Bytes, Core Flex, the next generation. So we got some exciting things lined up for you. And I see we're up to about 150 people now, more. That's just on LinkedIn, actually. That ignores the Facebook and YouTube people as well. So we've got loads of people coming on board, which is great. I'm seeing people coming from all over the world, from Switzerland, from Chicago, from Scotland, from London. Keep them coming. So anyway, now let's bring in our guests. Okay, I think it's time to meet our guests. And let's start off with our special guests. So let's start off, ladies first. Melissa, how are you?
Hi, how are you doing? Thanks so much for having me.
Oh, it's so much fun to have you here on the show. And whereabouts are you today?
I'm currently in New Jersey. I'm calling in from home.
Okay. Cool. Well, everybody's at home, isn't it? Have you been?
Well, we have some people actually going into the office. So tomorrow's an office day.
Cool. Oh, right. Okay. Yeah. We'll have to talk about that. And let's bring in Charles as well. So where's Charles? There you are, Charles. How are you doing?
I'm doing great.
Okay. Now, I asked you where you were earlier, and you said you're in your dining room. Okay.
I'm in my dining room. That's correct.
So
I'm in Houston.
Where are you?
Houston, Texas.
Okay. But your company Intuit's based in Mountain View, isn't it?
Yes. My move to Mountain View was scuttled by COVID. So I'm a COVID victim, if you'll consider it. I'm actually was very interesting to be putting our policies and our moves on hold, and actually putting my own move on hold at the same time. So, yeah.
Okay. Now I'm hearing from Maggie Ryan. She says, Charles is always candid and his global experience is second to none. Okay. So are you going to be candid with us today?
I'm going to be candid. I'm going to candidly tell you I love Maggie Ryan.
Okay. There we go.
I got the love going out already.
And Melissa, you've got shout outs too from Pamela Patterson. Hi, Melissa. Hope you're doing well.
Thanks so much. Hi, Pam.
So and yeah, the comments are all coming. But anyway, let me just bring in our regulars too. So Michelle, you're also in New Jersey, aren't you?
I am. I'm about an hour north of Melissa.
Okay. And are we seeing sunshine where you are? I see you got the banner.
I do. Hello, sunshine. The sun is shining. We had some terrible rain yesterday, but the sun has come out again.
It's a beautiful day.
Cool. And last but by no means least, we've got the immigration legend herself, who isn't coming on screen. We'll get her on screen. Here she comes. How are you doing, Julia?
Hi. Very well, thank you. Yeah.
Okay, now Julia, I've got something to say to you.
Mm-hmm.
I would, but it's not working. Here we go.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much. Yeah. Thank you. Yes, my husband gave me a very, very big jumper, which he always does every year. And I was actually trying to wear it, but I did think I might pass out in the heat. So I haven't got it on.
Okay, well, now the whole world knows it's your birthday.
Yes, thank you, Ryan, for that.
We've got 200 people out there now who are wishing you happy birthday.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm seeing, oh my God, it's gone mad. The hearts and the hand claps are coming up here. So anyway, let's move on because we've got so much to talk about today. And I want to introduce a new section to the show. And this is new. I'm going to try and do this every week. And this is called Fun Fact. So we're going to come out with a fun fact. We're going to and by the way, out there in LinkedIn world, if you've got some fun facts that you want to share, then email them through to me. It's brian.friedman@benevo.com. And if it's a great fun fact, we'll get you on the show to present your fun fact and have a bit of discussion about it. Or if you're shy, then I will present it for you. But this is today's fun fact, and in fact, I posted it on LinkedIn, which is, did you know King Ramesses, Pharaoh Ramesses, has a passport? And if you don't believe me, this is his passport. And this isn't fake, this is his real passport. And as you can see, it says date of birth 1303 BC and his profession, king, brackets, deceased. So the question is this: why does King Ramesses, Pharaoh, have his own passport? And let me tell you the answer, because I'm guessing none of you know, but I'll tell you the answer. And I'm no great immigration expert, but this is one where I'm going to sort of put my hat into the immigration ring. Is that in 1974? This is true. Okay, trust me, guys. In 1974, the Egyptian authorities wanted to ship the mummified remains of Ramesses to France for restoration work. Under French law, you are only eligible to enter France, whether alive or dead, if you have a passport. So the Egyptian authorities had to go and issue a passport for Ramesses so the mummified remains could be issued, could be sent out to France. So there you go. That's our fun fact of the day. Okay, so anyway, maybe that's one of the earliest relocations in a way. Well, 1300 BC, although I appreciate it was actually 1974. So anyway, what we're going to do now is we're going to say goodbye to Michelle, Charles, and Melissa. and we're going to move to Julia's global roundup. So let me do that. We're going to say goodbye to Charles. It's been fun having you on.
It's a temporary goodbye, right?
Yeah, I know you've hardly been on the show, but we'll get you back in a minute. But we're going to do the immigration stuff. So
Okay.
yeah, say goodbye, Charles.
Bye.
Okay, Melissa.
I have to go too. Bye.
Okay, you'll be back. Don't worry. And Michelle, it's bye-bye for now. Okay, so Julia, let's have the roundup. Tell us what's been going on.
I just want to give a big shout out to Henry de Saussay. Say he actually knew all about this. So that's very interesting. He said the Egyptians were actually concerned that the remains would not be given back if no proper ID was provided. So thanks for that.
Good point, Henry.
I had no idea. So obviously. Yeah. Anyway, so very quickly, I just wanted to say 1 minute about China. There's a very important update, is that if you have any assignees out there who hold a work visa or dependent visa for China, they can now simply re-enter on that basis. They can just go back to China on that basis. If their work visa or dependent visa expired after March the 28th, which was the date of the travel ban, then they can go to the Chinese consulate, they get preference, and they can swap it quite easily for a new visa. So you do not need now to go through all of that process that we talked about for several weeks about the special re-entry visa, and consulates are giving priority to these people. The whole idea is that China wants to encourage people to come back to China, and this is really great news. The other thing that's happened over the last week is that the quarantine rules have got slightly easier, in that you still have to do your 14 days, but you can do 7 in a hotel and 7 at home. And when you're actually entering China now through the airports, it's much easier. So very positive news. And moving on to Singapore, from Monday in Singapore, people were encouraged to go back to the office. And in Singapore, there's been this really innovative new pilot scheme. So it's called a business travel pass, and it's basically for people who have regional responsibility but are based in Singapore. You apply to the Economic Development Board for Singapore for one of these business travel passes, and it means that if your senior executive is allowed one, they get special concession in that when they're returning to Singapore, returning back from their business trips, they don't have to go through the whole 14 days of isolation. They can just self-isolate while they get the results of their COVID test. So it's a great idea. If anyone out there has regional heads who are based in Singapore and need to do a lot of business travel, it's a really fantastic new idea. And also Singapore has added more green corridors with Japan, Brunei, and South Korea. But remember what I said about those green channels. They actually come with a lot of quite restrictive processes. You have to spell out your whole itinerary, etc. And you really have to weigh up whether they're worth having. So just now hopping to Europe. And I'm speaking to Christine Sullivan and asking her this morning whether there was any update to this idea that there might be the EU-wide quarantine rules. And she said that everything was concentrating on the Brexit negotiations, and there were no updates on that. As you know, the UK's left the EU and the transition period comes to an end on the 31st of December. The UK set this deadline of October the 15th to strike a free trade deal with the European Union because they need the extra time up to the end of the year to get it ratified.
So that's Christine, 2.5 weeks away. Yes.
So Christine did say that there was one point she wanted to highlight, which I think is very useful for people, is that, you know, we have talked for a couple of weeks about how there's a concession for people to come in outside of the travel ban, and that was for economic necessity. And we were really talking about returning residents. But in the last week, we and others have used that for very senior executive who want to come in outside the travel ban, so say US citizens, and they're very senior and they want to say, do an acquisition, have a series of meetings across Europe. and we've managed to use that concession, as have others, to move those kind of people around, not just into Europe, but also we've managed to move them quite quickly around Europe. So please, if you have any people like that who need to come for business visits and move around Europe, but for very important reasons, it is possible. And then finally, I said that each week I was going to concentrate on one country in Europe, and this week it's
so where are we going? Where are we going this
Germany.
week?
Germany.
Okay, I've got it there.
Yeah. So wanted to thank Marcus Tolinari. And there was a very interesting article this week in the FT, which was talking about how certainly in the banking sector, a lot of people were wanting to delay their moves. They were talking about Paris and Frankfurt, and they were worried about the uncertainty around their careers, and did they really want to move to Frankfurt because, of the uncertainty. And so they were putting off the move until after the end of this year, which would mean they would fall into the new rules post-transition if there's nothing in a trade agreement. So I was asking Marius, well, what will these new rules be? So how will we advise people? How will we advise business who say, well, we've got people who are not going to move before Christmas, but they're British citizens. We're going to have to move them in January. So what rules can we expect for Germany? And Marius said that what we have to look is what the rules were that were published 2 years ago when we thought there would be a hard Brexit. He said Germany is deliberately, in his view, not publishing any rules at the moment because they don't want these to be used as a kind of bargaining chip in the current negotiations. But if we look back and see what rules were published 2 years ago, this will give us a very good idea about what's going to happen next year. And there is a best friends permit in Germany for countries like the US, Canada, Australia. And under those rules 2 years ago, the idea is that British citizens will be put into those best friend categories and then upgraded further to a more privileged position so that companies wouldn't have to do labour market testing. So you'd still have to make applications in the German embassy in London. You'd still have to fill in all the forms, but as long as you are paying the going rate, it should be relatively straightforward. But Marius said there is a point in all of this, is that, the German visa section is not very big in London. He thinks there might be a concession where you can get people to actually go on a visit to Germany and file in Germany. But if that doesn't come to light, then obviously it could take a long, long time to get these visas. And finally, I just wanted to end, the very last point is on the 1st of March, there was huge immigration reform in Germany, the Skilled Immigration Act, and it has a lot of great benefits that you can use for mobility. But because of COVID, no one's really talking about it and no one's really using it. But that's something to just bear in mind as a positive development that hopefully, you can use for others.
Okay, thank you. I just love this best friends idea. But even though it's your birthday, we're going to move you backstage for a bit. And we're going to go on to onto the big reveal. So thank you so much to Julia for help. I should actually say, just on a personal note, I didn't say at the beginning that, as many of you know, I had an eye operation a few days ago, and I've had a pretty sort of rough couple of days with it. I mean, until a couple of days ago, I was going around like this with an eye patch. But anyway, many thousands of you, literally thousands of you, viewed the comment. In fact, you could view better than I could at the time. And I got hundreds of messages wishing me well. So I just wanted to thank everybody for that, and just to assure you that I am on the mend. My eyesight isn't 100% perfect, so hopefully I won't miss any buttons. But as I do this, but anyway, it's all on the mend. But let's get on to the big reveal now. Okay, because we got something pretty exciting that I do want to share with you. This is an initiative that I want to get the whole industry behind, because these are difficult times. And I think now is the time when we can all come together. And this, I think, is something that's a bit of fun. And I think that you will all enjoy taking part. So let me just start off by telling you a bit about what we're planning to do. So let me just tell you about it. We've got this great initiative, which I think you will love. I certainly hope that you will love. What we're planning to do, or what we are doing, and it's open now, is we are launching a who's who for our profession. Who's who in global mobility. And we're calling it the Global Mobility Top 100. This is going to be so exciting. It's going to be with us for years to come. And this is open for absolutely everybody in the industry to take part. And it's going to work like this. Okay, there is a website, and this is the website. You can go on it now, you can go on it after the show, you can go on it any time until the end of October, and you can vote. And the website is called the top100.benevo.com. And what do you have to do when you go on this website? It is simple. It is so simple. All we're going to ask you to do is nominate 10 people, just 10 people who you think are the people who are the most inspirational in the industry, the most influential, the people who've got the best reputation, the brightest, the best, the movers and shakers. You don't necessarily have to know them personally. Maybe you know them by reputation. Maybe you've heard them speak in lectures. Maybe you've seen articles they've written. Okay, but what we're going to do is if everybody can put in their top 10s, we're then going to distill that down and come up with a top 100 list. And we will be revealing the top 100 list in December, live on air in December. We're going to be revealing the top 100. But if you could now go out and vote, as I said, you can vote for absolutely anybody you want in the world. There are just a couple of rules. And the rules are as follows. The first is that this list that we're issuing now is the in-house list. Okay, so please only vote for people who've got an in-house role in corporate global mobility at the moment, or it's okay if they're in transition, but it's somebody who's got an in-house role. We're not looking for service providers. We're going to do a separate list for service providers early in 21. Okay, but the list that is open now is purely the in-house list. Anybody can vote, whether you're a service provider, whether you're in-house, whether you're an academic, whether you're a commentator, whoever you are, you can vote, but you can only vote for people who've got in-house roles. The only other rule is that you cannot vote for yourself. You cannot nominate yourself, but do go out and nominate. And then we're going to have to make sure that this isn't just a popularity concept. We've got two types of vote. We've got the people's vote, and that's what all of you are, and you can vote and you can put it into the people's vote. And we've also got power voters. And the power voters are all the people who've been on the show before. We're going to invite them to show, all the alumni. And for those of you who've watched the show, and the show's been going for 2 years now, firstly as a podcast and then as a live cast, we've had some of the most respected names in global mobility have been on the show over the years. And we think that they are people who, have got pretty serious heavyweight insight into who should be on a top 100 list. So we are honoring our alumni by giving them a power vote. But you, the people, we want everybody to vote. This is open to everybody. So please do get onto that website, top100.benevo.com, and vote. Vote now. Vote, well, maybe not right during the show, we don't lose you, but vote over the next couple of days, and let's get the votes in there. So that's the big initiative that we're launching. And I certainly hope that you enjoy it as much as it's been, real fun for us to come up with the idea. Anyway, what I want to do now is let's bring on our special guests. So let's bring them on. Here's Melissa.
Hi.
Hi there, Melissa. Good to see you again.
Great to be back.
And let's bring back Charles. Hey there, Charles.
Howdy.
Okay. And Charles and Melissa, obviously you're now power voters. You can get to vote. Don't tell us. We don't want to know live on air who you're going to vote for, but please do have a good think about it and think about who you would like to see on that top 100 list. And in these hard times, and they really are tough times for the mobility industry, let's use it as a chance to celebrate, the brightest and best of our industry. But let's find out about you guys. Melissa, let's start with you. What was how did you get into?
I had fall into this.
Yeah, I mean, nobody's sort of like a primary school or a high school saying, you know what, I really want to be a global mobility specialist.
I majored in international relations, and I got out of school during a recession, and everything was closed off. And the one job that opened up in a newspaper ad, starting to date myself, over 25 years ago, was an on-site position at Merck & Company. So I was hired by a relo service provider called Forward Mobility at that time. Started, very basic at Merck, and then transferred over into client relations for the organization. Did sales and marketing, worked with a couple of other relo providers, RDI, then eventually with Cornerstone for quite a few years. Worked in inventory management. I kind of did the whole circle, temporary housing, international and domestic counseling, kind of broke my chops on every area. Worked for a brief period of time for ExecuState by Marriott in sales, opened the Philadelphia market, really learned the temporary housing piece, and ultimately had the opportunity to transfer over to the corporate side, where I was hired by PVH and worked there for 5.5 years and really helped to build their relo global mobility program from the ground up. They didn't have anything at that time. Now
PVH, I must admit, I didn't know PVH, but then
Yes.
I googled around and did all that sort of malarkey,
Yes.
and I see that it's your Calvin Klein and Tommy Hilfiger and Van Heusen.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. So that's part of the routine. You'd say, do you know who PVH is? And I'm like, well, do you know Tommy Hilfiger, Calvin Klein? And people will be like, oh, yeah. So I was there for 5.5 years. And then a little over a year plus, I made the transition over to Teva Pharmaceuticals. And interestingly, and I think a lot of people in the organization have probably experienced this when they've made that transition, they used to be one of the clients I worked with when I was on the Cornerstone side. So I had a little insight into the organization and how they, what made them tick.
Okay, well, let's get on to that in a moment about this sort of the divergence. Let's just bring Charles into the conversation. So Charles, you've also been both sides of the fence, haven't you? Because but tell me, you're with Intuit now. Mm-hmm. So tell me a bit about the Intuit program.
Sure. I've been with Intuit for about 14 months now. We are a global company, but we are probably more heavily US focused on a global expansion path, though. So we move about, in a normal year, roughly 300 people US domestic. We support about 350 interns. We've got a sizable India domestic program as well that I manage, and then an India intern program. We also have a very sizable immigration program that we're managing. And then we've got a handful of expats in a normal year, probably 20, and we do probably 25 international one-way moves a year. It's not a huge program. It's a very, we're really focused on kind of delivering a concierge level of service.
Okay, but before that, you managed some pretty massive programs, didn't you?
Yeah, I was at Chevron previous to this, which is about, it's about, in a good year, it's 3,000 to 5,000 U.S. domestic moves and 3,000 to 5,000.
You did that all by yourself?
No, it was actually a team of 80 at its peak. It's a much smaller program now, but at its peak, about 80 people in-house, not counting consultants. There were probably another 100 people at service providers supporting that program. Okay,
so that must have been quite a transition to go from 3,000 to several hundred.
Yeah, it's actually been really enjoyable. I moved back and forth between big and small programs. Yeah. You get to know the people who are moving and a lot closer your employee population than you can ever when you got so many people moving that you might only know 1 or 2% of them.
There's a lot of truth to that. And I think that's what really makes the role enjoyable when you do have that opportunity to really interface a little bit more closely. There are people you run into in the hallways. There are people that, their stories. And I think that's one of the more enjoyable components of this job.
Yeah, I agree.
Absolutely. So, one thing with both you guys is you've both been both sides of the fence. You've both been gamekeeper and poacher, or I don't know which in our industry, but you've both been service provider. In fact, you're both service providers first, weren't you?
Correct.
Yeah.
And then you
I started third party longer ago than I care to admit. I'd sort of, moved around in kind of real estate related work and went to a company called The Associate, which for us old timers, we might remember. Other people might be like, I've never heard of them.
Yeah.
But they had an REO management group, and actually that's where I was. I was not in mobility. I was managing property that was owned, foreclosure properties that were owned by banks, and we were managing them. And every time I got transitioned to a new role, I got further away from that and more into mobility. So I just kind of was like, that old song, Magnet and Steel. I just got pulled in that direction.
Okay. So my question is this: which do you prefer?
I'm going to go on record as saying I prefer being in-house, although there were some great, there were some really interesting things about being for companies that their focus area is actually what you do, versus when you're in-house, you're a tiny part of an organization that lots of people in the organization don't even know until they need your services. There was definitely something about that in the educational opportunities and advancement opportunities, but I think I like being in-house.
And I would agree at this point in my career, I do as well. But I would say that I would not trade that time I spent, because I really felt it trained me to know how to not only appreciate the hard work that all of our service providers do for us, and really have that clarity and understanding that when you're asking for an exception, what that really means and the time that they're giving into that, to have a better understanding of what's feasible and not feasible on their end. But it's really helped me be able to provide a better service to my organizations, because I do have that more rounded version of all the different components. So I think it's something I've grown into.
And I never rule out going back, by the way, to third party. It's then you take the skills that you gained in-house and you take them back. Because I've actually jumped twice. I started third party, I went in-house, I went back to consulting with Ernst & Young, and then went back in-house.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose when you're in-house, at least what you do, you actually get to do. You're actually sort of seeing the project through, you're actually doing it. Whereas when you're a consultant, you're sort of advising on it, but you're not sort of getting it done the same way.
I may go a little off topic here, but I think honestly, if you're managing your suppliers well, they feel exactly like they're part of your program.
Correct.
And they don't feel a separation. So, the key to successful supplier management is treating them like equals in the process and giving them access to every bit of information that you have. When you don't do those things, that's when you run into supplier.
Yeah, I think that's a really strong point he makes. And that's something I try to stress with all the relationships I've had. We are one team. We need everyone to make this happen. And it's really working together in tandem. I need your services to be able to get our folks moving forward.
You can't build a ladder with broken rungs, right? You mean you're never be able to climb.
Okay, so we've got a lot of service providers out there. We've got about 240 people online, and so a lot of them are going to be service providers. And those service providers probably fall into two categories. There are those that serve you at the moment, and those that would actually like to serve you. So we've got those two categories. So the question really that I want to sort of ask is, what message would you put out there to the service providers in terms of what you'd like to see from an ideal service provider? What are you looking for?
I think for me, it's a service provider that's looking ahead, always looking at ways that we can take the organization one step forward. I'm not worried about today. We're managing today. It's really, what can you do moving forward to help us to be able to, be cost competitive, to be working with more ease around the globe. That's what I'm looking for, that additional knowledge to be able to take us to that next step.
Yeah, so we've got a comment coming in here from Steve Burston. I think everyone should start as a service provider, like I think that everyone should work at a restaurant before they eat at one. Okay.
A lot of truth to that. A lot of truth to
Okay, which basically means you've got to start at about the age of 5. But I mean, do you agree? Do you think, I mean, you guys both did start as service providers. Do you think that's the right way around to do it, or do you think it doesn't really matter? And Lisa Johnson is agreeing. Actually, yeah, I'll put that. I'm not sure she's agreeing with the same thing. She said,
I think it probably gave us empathy.
Yeah, I agree.
I mean, I mean, I would say it gives you empathy. Honestly, it gives you a grounding that it takes a long time to get internally. So I think there's some benefit to working on that side, and probably to start off. I mean, I started at the very, very bottom on, the third party side and worked my way up from there.
Yeah, and I would have had that experience. I mean, when I was with the one organization, just being able to almost rotate within different aspects and learn different pieces of it that I now have to bring together. I wouldn't have had that just walking into the corporate side. And I definitely do agree with Charles. I think it provides a level of empathy. It's a very difficult job when, you call up your service provider and you have all of these HR leaders breathing down your neck and say, I need something to happen now. And I think when you understand what that request means and how much extra effort and time they're going to be putting behind the scenes to make it happen for you, I think it's great if you're in that position to be able to appreciate that versus having no idea of what you're asking for.
Okay, here are some comments coming in. Mark O'Reilly, great vendors think of solutions to bring to you before you take the problem or the challenge to them. Okay, what do you make of that? I mean, Charles, what do you make of that one?
Yeah, no, that's absolutely true. Although, I mean, as a somebody who likes to innovate myself, I actually enjoy partnering on those sorts of conversations. I would say, a great supplier and a great client are people who treat each other as equals in the process and don't, I want to be involved. But I mean, I think every company and probably every person is a little different in this regard. The number one thing for me to have, for successful supplier relationships is no scapegoating, right? Like the blame game. It's really looking at things and saying, hey, like, help us understand what happened here.
Right.
Help us understand where the disconnects were. Were they on our side? Were they on your side? Were they on the employee side? Let's make sure we've got that straightened out, and then let's use that to build a process where we're not going to repeat that.
Okay, let's just move on the conversation a bit. I want to get into not so much the service provider, but your own roles and our industry. And the question I just want to ask is, how can mobility stay relevant? And what I mean is that, the mobility profession depends on there being mobility. And at the moment, there's very little mobility, and mobility is changing in terms of what we're going to see in mobility. So how do you think we as an industry can stay relevant? What can we do to stay relevant in this industry?
Well, I was going to say, I think one point, and maybe the international scene is not happening as much, but certainly, I have a lot in the hopper domestically, so we are keeping busy within our own organization. But in terms of how we stay relevant, I think really partnering, and I think we're having that opportunity more. We've been talking about this for so long, to partner with groups such as talent acquisition. And so that the moves that you are going to have, really partnering to make sure that it is a successful move, and that as families are changing and as the situation is changing, that you're able to bring the different, compliance components that need to be thought of, everything that the talent group may not be thinking of to help secure that individual and move it forward. So I think we're integrating ourselves more at that table, so to speak, with groups such as the talent acquisition.
Okay, and yeah, I'm hearing that. I'm listening. What's this from Dave Nelson? Here's a great point from Dave. Alignment, anticipation, acceleration, the 3 A's. Here we go. Alignment, anticipation, acceleration. Forward-looking is necessary in order to bring these principles to full impact.
Well said.
Yeah, well
done, Dave.
Yeah. So Charles, where are you on, what are your thoughts on how we can make mobility stay relevant in these, systemic change type times? So this is not, a short issue. This is systemic now.
Well, I mean, Dave pretty much hit it right there. I think the anticipation is a really big, one of the probably the biggest A. right now because every one of our companies is different, right? We're all looking at COVID and return to work a little differently. For me, our normal day-to-day business is down, way down, right? So what am I doing? How am I spending my days? It's working on what our approach to remote work is going to be, how we're going to be compliant in that space. We're talking on, who's going to manage those processes. And, much to the chagrin of my team sometimes, I'm the guy in the meeting always raising my hand and saying, we'll take it.
Mm-hmm.
We'll take it. You want business travel tax compliance? We'll take it. I'll do it. You want somebody who's going to manage our mobile workforce and where they are at any given time? Yeah. We'll take it. We'll manage that. We can manage that. We've got the expertise. We're already doing that for immigration. We're doing that in other spaces. We're happy to take that. So
that is so positive. I mean, I've heard people say to me that global mobility is the function that likes to say no.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter what the question is. Global mobility is normally the one that puts up its hand and says, you can't do that. And then they'll go PE or immigration rule or tax compliance or duty of care or something. Whereas the line just wants to say, well, never mind the rules, let's just do it. And I know we've got to do that. And obviously compliance is a huge issue. But what you're turning it around, Charles, and you're saying, actually, it's not, there might be some times when we've got to say no, but actually what you're saying is, let's bring it into our tent. We will deal with it, and then we'll find the solution rather than just.
Yeah, what I'm saying is we have the expertise. Let us, let us handle those things like duty of care. Let's handle those things like immigration and tax compliance because we have the expertise in our group. So give it to us. We're happy to take it.
And we're in a similar position from a global perspective. We've been taking on more of these projects in this open space, such as the immigration, reviewing policies, looking at ways of partnering more, with business travel. There's just different areas that we're starting to have the breadth of space and time to be able to actually look at that we haven't had in the past. So I think it's kind of opened up this opportunity to maybe realign and reevaluate how we're going to move forward in a very positive manner that we haven't had that time in the past because we're always constantly just running through each season.
Yeah.
Here's a question that's come in. I'll just put it. I think it's from Mark Grubb, but it comes up as LinkedIn user, which is to do with privacy settings. So as we look forward, do you think the level of mobility and relocation will go down? Some clients are telling us that they're not doing relocation anymore. What's your long-term or medium-term prognosis?
Michelle, you want to go first?
Yeah, I was going to say, I still think that we're going to have mobility. I think, there certainly is a dip or there's a hold, but I sort of have a whole group of people that I'm waiting to bring into the country once we're able to do that. I think, people will look at different ways of working, but you can't do every job remote. And, if you're bringing in someone to run a plant or manage a certain group, a lot of times, you can do some of it virtual, but you do need to have someone there. So I think it may dive into the type of job you're looking to hire for, but there's still going to be a need to bring talent and face-to-face contact with individuals.
Okay, let me bring Michelle into the conversation because we've been doing some research. We always do a bit of research, and for some reason, there she is. Okay, hi there, Michelle.
Hi.
Okay. So you've been doing some research about this and about strategy, I think.
Yeah, I think there's been a carrying theme from week to week around strategy and is mobility strategic? Does it need to be more strategic? And so the question I asked this week was, in your current role, how important is it to be a strategic mobility leader? I think the answer varies from organization to organization. So the options were very, somewhat, or not very. So I'm curious, for Melissa and Charles, how you would answer that question, and for our viewers, ask you the same question. In your current role, how important is it for you to be a strategic mobility leader?
Go ahead.
So, Charles,
so first of all, I'll apologize for calling Melissa Michelle. That's just the M name.
Michelle and I are used to that, right?
Yeah, it's
Okay.
Names never my strong.
What are we going to call you then?
Yeah, well, you can call me anything. I answer to just about anything. And have actually answered to just about anything. I have more nicknames than most people. I think it's actually super important to be strategic in your role. And this is kind of what we're talking about. You know, in my role, as we are looking at what our workforce future is going to be, you know, things like talking about mobility, like we're always going to be moving people. We're going to have international assignments. We're going to be moving people. That's going to happen. But what is really the future of what is really the future of mobility? I mean, you know, if I'm crystal balling it for my organization, I'm going to say we're going to be doing a lot more short-term assignments, both domestically and internationally. And as we shape our workforce strategy going forward, having a seat at the table and talking about how we can support that and what benefit that will bring to the organization, I think it's incredibly important. I mean, I don't want to you know, throw stones at anybody said it's not very important, but I would be surprised if your organization feels that running mobility strategically is not important to them. And if they do truly feel that way, you need to find a different employer.
Okay, so you're clearly on that side. And what about you, Melissa? Are you the same thing?
I definitely agree. And we've been looking at the strategy internally. This is something, again, in this space of time that we've had that breadth to do, and really evaluating what type of moves work for us as an organization. You know, we've had this whole classification, we'll do this type of move, that type of move, but maybe that's not what's best for us moving forward. And also looking at costs, you know, kind of taking a step back and evaluating how much of each of these type of assignments cost us, and looking at that ROI, which we were talking about offline a little earlier. And maybe we need to tweak it. Maybe we need to change it. So we are deeply involved in looking at that. I think it's incredibly important. It goes hand in hand. And, you know, as Charles said, if you're not doing that, it's not the right type of forward-moving focus.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's talk about the results then, Michelle.
Well, yeah, I think our audience agrees. 90% of respondents said that they thought it was very important to be strategic in their current role. 7% said somewhat, and 2% said not very.
And that may be partially based on what their role is. I think at different times of my career, depending on how much, you know, ability I had to influence or have that conversation, maybe that answer would have been different.
Agree. And I think some organizations view mobility as just operational and transactional, and they have to move for you know, could be customers, and it's not necessarily part of the company's strategy to move people, but more of a business need. So
business transaction, right?
And maybe the 2% just had a really bad day, because there's some days I'm not going to lie to you, there's some days I would say, well, I guess it's not very important either after conversation.
I think one of the problems we all have in the profession is there's two types of problems you're dealing with. You're dealing with ones which are important and ones which are urgent.
Mm-hmm.
And too often the urgent stuff gets in the way, and you don't get around to doing the important stuff because you're dealing with all the urgent stuff. Yeah. So that raises the question. We know it's important. We know it's very important to be a strategic mobility leader. How do you do it? How do you become that strategic mobility leader? In other words,
I think having the knowledge, having the knowledge in the space is really important, right? So that's the foundation that you build upon. Always growing yourself and learning more things. Understanding your organization and what the organization is looking for, what they're hoping to achieve. So really, you know, just like as a service provider, it's really important to know what your clients are trying to achieve. In internal mobility, it's really important to know what our businesses are trying to achieve and why, how. I've changed, just as an aside, I've done mobility, but I've done it in vastly different industries. Banking, now fintech, previously oil and gas. I can actually tell you like how an oil well works. Why do I know how an oil well works? Because I thought it was really important to know what the business that I was supporting did, and why it was important for them to have an engineer who could take that oil well apart and put it back together, put that pump jack back together, was important to them. And I think that's incredible. It's just really incredible to learn what our businesses do and why they do it and how they do it. And I think like bringing that to the table is super important.
And I think part of you bringing to the table is pushing yourself to be able to have those conversations with the people who are making those decisions. And so I always find, when you start with a new organization or if you're with a new division, if they don't come to you to have that conversation and set up a meeting time and get to know who you are, you really need to set up the time with them and find out what's important to them. What are they looking for? And I have found, when I started in the current organization, where I had some really high level people who set up appointments with me and said, look, I just want to know, where you're coming from, what's your background. Let's talk about what I'm trying to accomplish, so that we had this communications that had started, so that when they're out there and I'm not going to talk to them for a while, I at least have an idea of where they're going within their business unit and what they're trying to achieve. And so I think trying to either be invited or get yourself invited to that initial conversation as part of that education is so important.
Yeah, and leveraging the opportunities that you have to do that to
Correct.
then show how you can be strategic. So just for example, I had yesterday, I had to have a call with one of our top HR folks about a challenging move that's going on. And actually, as I kind of did some of the research, I thought actually about canceling that call because it turned out things were a little different than I had anticipated up front.
Mm.
And I told the person I was meeting with, actually, I said, I considered canceling this call. And the real reason I didn't, because you and I don't get to connect very frequently. And even though the reason I was originally going to talk to you really isn't as important as I thought it was going to be, I want to hear what's going on in your world.
Yeah, and I think that gets back to building that whole relationship. You were talking about earlier, Brian, about global mobility sometimes being looked upon as the people who keep saying no, no, no. I think you want to become that person that people come to when they say, look, I love that question when I'll get a call from HR and they say, look, I don't know if this falls under your territory, but can you help me out? And 90% of the time, I don't know the answer, but I'm willing to dig and figure out something to help them along. And you start to become that person that people come to for that response. And then they start asking you, okay, if we're going to do a move this way, what are things that we need to consider? You become initiated into that process as a normal course of action.
And then when you say no, when you have to say no, they don't treat you as a roadblock. They treat you as somebody who knows what they're talking about, and you're saying no for the right reason.
Correct.
I wonder if one of the things that we should be doing as a profession is taking on, from the point Charles was saying earlier, is grabbing more of the issues into our court. And let me give you one example that I heard of. I won't mention the company, but it was a US company on the West Coast who announced that everybody could work from home. Okay, and that was just it's one of those tech companies. I won't say which one. They said everybody can work from home, and that was all fine. Everybody could work from home, and then they changed that a bit later to say everybody could work from home, provided it was within the same country. And then they've changed that a bit later to say everybody can work from home, provided it's within an hour's drive of one of 5 offices. So, they've completely changed it over a period, because I think they were just finding that this concept of saying, well, actually, people can just go and work from wherever they want was actually too difficult. And there's a role in there for mobility, maybe to transform itself into a bit more around the whole area of workforce deployment, not just about moving people to jobs, but also about moving jobs to people. I don't know whether we'll be there in a year's time or 5 years time or 10 years time, but I do wonder if that is the way that we're going to be moving. I mean, we've always spoken, for the last sort of, 5-10 years about short-term business visitors, and do we do it in mobility or don't we do it? We get our arms around it. Maybe actually there's a whole other area that 10 years ago we weren't thinking about, which is.
I think that conversation is starting to happen. I've been part of groups where they are starting to talk about that, particularly when you're any tax implications that haven't happened yet, or salary, how you're handling that role if someone is starting to work in a different state. I think, again, we will start to see that transformation into some of those different areas we haven't put our toe into. I think we're starting to dip into different waters, and we are looked upon as piece, someone people can come to for advice or information will be invited more to those conversations.
Yeah, and we did a bit of research around some of this. I mean, Michelle, I think you did some research into what companies might expect from their mobility teams, how we can step up to the plate.
Yeah, we did. We asked where should companies rightfully expect more from their mobility teams and suppliers? And the choices we gave were greater strategic insights, more flexibility / scalability, better cost management, or enhanced vendor integration. I think the answer for most becomes all of the above, as some of these questions do. But if you had to pick one,
I think
Brian,
it depends who's asking me that question, right? I think people are going to have different, I have divisions that would look at it and say, look, the costs are too high, where this is not what we budgeted for. How can you bring the costs down? I may have senior leaders who are saying, well, strategically, we have to look at things different to bring in the employees we need. I don't know, Charles, what do you think on that?
And the answer is all of the above, and exactly kind of what you're saying. It really depends on the conversation you're having at any given time. I mean, companies are schizophrenic on cost. I've never worked for a company that hasn't been schizophrenic on cost. They have, frequently there's no issue at spending money when it's deemed, the right place to spend it. And whether or not we agree, because I'm going to tell you, there are times when I don't agree that it's the right place to spend it. That's where the business feels that spending their money is the most is the best. There are other areas we talk about, like career development, international assignment. Should we be providing full expatriate packages for those folks? Should they be going as local plus? And having options available for the businesses to look at. So I think there's all of this. I will tell you that integrations and technology will be a big focus where we are looking in the next couple of years around, how do we improve the employee's experience through technology, reducing duplication, reducing manual inputs, all of this sort of stuff. I mean, I know it's been the focus of health, definitely an evolution. For us, we've got a long way to go in that space. I'm really excited to go there.
Moving off of Excel sheets.
Yeah.
Let's go into the result. I think we had a little bit of problem with your sound there, actually, Charles. But Michelle, can we just go into the results?
Sure. The results, yep. So 51% of respondents said greater strategic insights, which I think goes along with the rest of the theme we've been talking about. 20% said more flexibility, scalability, better cost management, 12%, and enhanced vendor integration was at 18%.
Okay, well, I think we're getting close to the end of the hour. I'm just going to bring Julia back online. There she comes. And it's been, hopefully everybody's enjoyed it. It's been, it's been a lot of fun today. But I'd especially just like to just end up by just saying a few words about this Global Mobility Top 100 list initiative that we launched. I was looking at the comments coming through, and a lot of people were saying how they really like it, they want to get involved. People were asking me, someone said, oh, it's a bit like the Academy, it's a bit like this, or the Oscars, everybody gets a vote. And yes, you're all members. It's also a bit like The Voice or something, or I don't know, maybe I'm turning into the Simon Cowell of global mobility here, that we can have a real opportunity for everybody to have their say, and then we have the power voters as well. It is going to be a huge list. I mean, someone actually said, oh, is it like the Emmas? And the answer is absolutely not. So obviously I'm very fond of the Emmas from a personal perspective. It's absolutely not. This is a list of the top 100 people. This is not going to be awards for who's doing the best program or the best this or that. This is a list of 100 people who are the most influential, the brightest and the best, and the most innovative, the real movers and shakers. And we want to get that as a publication that goes out every year so that everybody can see who are the people that are really highly reputed by their peers and by the industry. So please, everybody, I think, as I said, these are dark times, and it would be really nice if everybody could come together, take part. It's a bit of fun. Put in your vote as to who your top 10 are. We'll collate all those top 10s, and we'll come out with the GM Top 100, which we're going to release in early December. So if you can vote sometime in the next couple of weeks, we'd really appreciate that. Remember, it's corporate only, and then we're going to do the same thing for service providers in January. And I mean, other people, someone came to me and said, is there a list of people who I can choose from? And the answer is no. You can choose anybody you want in the entire world, no limits. You decide. If you rate them, that's good enough for us. Put them on your top 10 list. So let's see everybody coming onto the website. As I said, the website is thetop100.benevo.com. Do come onto that website. Do vote. Anyway, we've had our hour. It's been a blast. I've really enjoyed it. Happy birthday, Julia, again.
Thank you.
Lovely seeing you again, Michelle. And big special thank you to our guests, Charles and to Melissa. It's been great fun. And thank you to everybody in the audience for being with us. And we'll see you all again next week.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.